All right, so with everything going on, man, I think pretty much right now, it's a good time as a Knicks fan to really get some of these issues hashed out because honestly, big dogs, look, I'm even kind of dreading winning if we win tomorrow or whatever. Of course, I want to win, right? I want it over with or whatever. But I want y'all to understand, gang. Like I say a lot, it's not about the destination, right? Winning the championship. I want to win a championship. I want to feel the feeling of being the world champion. I've done it. I've had it in other sports. I'm a Duke fan. I'm a Florida State Seminoles football fan, right? I'm a Giants fan. I'm a Mets fan. I can even remember the Mets champion. That's my first introduction into sports. So I remember what it felt like seeing Orozco throw that last pitch in 1986, okay? But I definitely want to feel this again. Like, I don't want the Knicks to ever regress into the bad organization that we have been. And I really preface this by saying this, right? This New York Knicks, Carmelo, Jeremy Lin conversation is important from the reference of understanding that this is where we have to learn from shit that happened 14 years ago, right? So we don't become that organization, right? We don't become that team that doesn't win anything. Right now the Knicks roster is in a good base, right? You got a bunch of the particulars. Nobody really in the main rotation is over the age of 30, right? You got Jordan Clarkson, who's 33. So this team got a chance. I'm sure Mr. Dolan is going to spend the money to keep all the particulars in place, right? I'm sure the Knicks are going to make moves here and there with the draft picks we do have to get good young excited players to keep the roster fresh, to give certain elements on the roster where we need to be, right? And like I said, we're from here. We're no longer Martin Lord. I'm going on to the bridge. We got the subway coming on over. We're no longer the LOL Knicks. Them days is over, and I make this abundantly clear. But I have got to react because I just watched the video, the whole 40 plus minutes of it. I just watched the video of Jeremy Lin, and it just dropped a couple of hours ago. So apparently they had the conversation between games 3 and games 4, but the editing, obviously, that show does editing processes and shit like that. So they probably had the conversation. I'm guessing between Monday and Thursday, so they probably had it Tuesday, right? And here we are. Okay. So with that being said, right, a lot of things that was said in that conversation I knew and learning, and I've always said this, fellas. The reason why I'm on YouTube is because I believe, in general, the sports media is absolute dog shit. They push the narratives they want. It's not been about telling the truth. It's about sensationalizing every story that they want sensationalized. That's what the sports media is about in this current era, right? And I feel it's bullshit because it leads people astray. It puts division into a team like the Knicks, and this is the thing, right? Now let's be clear. A lot of people blame Jeremy Lin not coming back to the Knicks on Carmelo Anthony. The narrative, the easy to decipher and accept narrative is that Melo was jealous of Lin. He didn't like the play style, which there's truth in that. And let's be real. The play style was not sustainable. It had a spark, but it was not going to get us to the level where it needed to be, right? And therefore, Melo was full out against Jeremy Lin coming back to the Knicks. And people really believe he went to James Dolan and said, don't sign this guy or I'm going to be out, which never happened. There's not even a credible reason to think that. Less known to believe it actually happened. There's not even a credible reason to even think that that was the case. But it's the narrative that people run with anyway, right? And I get that. I accept it to a point. I understand that it's based on a lot of bullshit. It's based on a lot of things that never happened. And again, a lot of false reporting. Now, trust me, there's local. Understand this. The national media hates the Knicks. They hate it. This is why you see every single thing, every little fart that happens at these watch parties or whatever. Look, you get a bunch of drunk people in a fucking place where there's sports. This shit's gonna happen, right? It happens in stadium. It happens in every Phillies game, Philadelphia Flyers. It happened. Boston jumped the guy with the Iverson jersey after Philly beat Boston in Game 7. Shit got a whimper. But every little thing, even though these were viral situations where you had influencers coming up to taunt Knicks fans in Spurs jersey. God probably wasn't even a fucking Spurs fan. But look, I'm not going to get caught in that. Understand, the national media hates the Knicks. That's why I listened to nothing that the national media said at the time. Now, at the time in 2012, I was working an overnight job. I used to have my headphones in my ear. We're talking back to, I used to have the radio, listening to 1050 ESPN radio, right? This is back when both stations still had AM dials, right? ESPN went back to they now 880, right? But they was on 98.7 for a minute. But that's how far I'm telling you I go back. And I was listening to the ESPN New York and the WFAN radio reports on things, right? And the MSG reports on things. I listen to the local media, okay? So, and this is the thing. Here's the other thing that I do, right? When I chronicle things, when I take my account, I listen to the actual source. And it's great that 14 years later, and this is where I've learned a lot of things. I learned Lin perspective. I learned Melo's perspective. I pretty much understood I knew Melo's perspective back then. He's a superstar player. He's not in the concept. This people Melo had Dolan's ear. Melo did not have Dolan's ear like that. This is not the fucking Cleveland Cavaliers. We're the New York Knicks. Yes, we were poorly run at the time. Remember, we had multiple regimes coming through the door. The Steve Mills, the what's the guy? I can't even remember his name. It was something Stein. It was basically a Jewish guy. I forget the guy who was running the Knicks for a certain amount of time. But they made a decision, and I thought it was a stupid fucking decision. Once Linsanity was doing what it was doing, and the tickets were selling, and the merchandise was selling, and like I said, they made like $100,000 of merchandising, right? The Lin jerseys, everything. Lin was a cash cow. He was a cash cow, right? And the Knicks, see, he was gonna become a pretty rich individual regardless, right? But the Knicks could have offered him 3 years and $9 million, and I thought the Knicks were absolutely stupid for not doing it. Whether they thought he would be a great player or not. This is the key to understand. The Knicks needed a point guard. The Knicks have needed a point guard since Mark Jackson was traded for Charles Smith and Bo Kimball. Okay? That's how long the Knicks have needed a point guard. All right? We had Stephon Marbury, who I'm a big fan of and I thought was a great point guard. Problem was, we didn't have a team. Now, it's funny, if you put Marbury on there with Stanton and Melo, you're probably talking about a team that's going to the conference finals at a minimum. But we needed a point guard. And Jeremy Lin proved that he could play in this league. Now, did he prove he was a franchise player? Let's just go through history. When he left to Houston, he was not a franchise player. That team, right after he signed, they traded for James Harden. Now, it's funny, right? Everybody with the, well, yeah, Melo didn't want Lin to be the star of the team. So this is the problem with you Knicks fans. Y'all got to understand this. And y'all got to take what's going on now. Y'all got to look at the attitude of the team now. We all know that this is Jalen Brunson's team. But in that locker room, they don't act like it's Jalen Brunson's team. I think y'all need to understand, he has the C on his chest. He deserves the C. But the attitude, and I really think the attitude, like Melo gets the label of being such a selfish guy because you look at his play style, which is an immaculate play style, yet it does have his drawing points. Yes, he is an isolation-heavy basketball player. But he's also a willing passer when there are people to pass to. And see, the pick-and-roll style that we were running under D'Antoni was not going to work against a better defensive team. Trust me, he had better players than Jeremy Lin, and it would always get duffed out by the San Antonio Spurs. The San Antonio Spurs and the Dallas Mavericks, and there were a couple other teams, the New Jersey Nets when they came back. Those were teams that, when the Knicks had their losing streak and before D'Antoni's firing, those were teams that adjusted to the whole style. So the style was not sustainable. It worked against Toronto. It worked against New Jersey the first time. It even worked to a Lakers team that didn't know, like Kobe said, who the hell is Jeremy Lin? I don't know who he is. That's how locked in Kobe was. He didn't know about the whole viral sensation going on in New York until it was time to play. But okay, as Melo said, he's the one that hyped up Lin to Kobe. He spoke to Kobe and said, oh yeah, this Lin kid is going to bust your ass. Okay? And look, this is all part of the legend. So, again, a lot of things were had in this conversation. And I know it's 14 years. I already started this video of saying why I'm talking about this and why I need to be talked about. Because it's these divisive things, you throw enough discord in the air, and it can fuck the team up. It can fuck the team up. Now, a lot of what happened is you got to chalk it up to the business of basketball, which Lin and Melo themselves said. It's that business of basketball shit. It's the dollar signs. It's the poison pill in that contract. That's what prevented Lin. And look, I even owe Lin an apology because it was his agent doing all of the work. Now again, I owe Lin an apology because I've always said, well, Lin, you were the one that went back, and you do have the right to tell your agent, I want to stay in New York. You got to make it happen. But the Knicks, since they never made the qualifying offer, which is the Knicks front office, this had nothing to do with Melo. Melo is not, again, we're not the fucking Cavaliers where Melo didn't even have enough gravitas to sit there and tell the Knicks what they could do. He wasn't the capologist or anything like that. I don't even think the Knicks had a capologist at the time. See, these are the details. If you understand, this is why the Knicks are in the position they are, because they actually hired Leon Rose actually hired a cap expert who understands everything, all of the rules and everything necessary when it comes to dealing with the new luxury tax rules and the first and second acre rules. They hired one of the guys who was at the meeting to decide how this new salary cap will be worked out. Very important details, fellas. Very important details. It can be boring to have this conversation if you're a casual basketball fan. If you're a casual basketball fan, it is what it is. Don't watch this video to the end. Okay? But at the time, like I said, the reason the Knicks did not, and it was like, okay, I believe the way the contract was structured, 3 for 25. The first offer they made to Lin was a 6, I think a 6, a 7, a standard 7, 6, 7, and 8. Not doing the math, that doesn't work out. It was more like 7, 8. Oh no, they were actually going to offer him about 3 years, $21 million. They came back and the Knicks were going to match that offer. And they came back and offered a poison pill offer. Now I want y'all to understand about that poison pill year. So, and the whole thing about the ridiculous contract. From what I understand, right, or what I can go back and look and get the ridiculous, right? The first 2 years, Lin was going to be paid like between 4 and 5 million in those first two years. The majority of the contract, I think, would have been year 3, where he'd have been a 15 minute, where he would have been paid in that third year like a superstar. Now I want you to understand those details, right? Because in that third year, Houston didn't pay that. They traded his contract to the Los Angeles Lakers, where he played alongside Kobe Bryant on a bad Laker team, when the Lakers used that part of the contract as an expiring deal that they would have salary cap relief, say circa 15, 16. Okay? That's how that went down. So the Lakers would pay him that 1 year. Understand this. The Lakers would pay him for that 1 year. And after that, Lin would be a free agent. And he spent the rest of his career as a journeyman. Okay? Because, let's be real, and again, I'm someone who likes Lin. I've always liked Lin. I love the fact that Linsanity happened on my team. I love it. I love the fact. I've never sat there, but one thing I do understand, and again, like I said, I owe Lin an apology because hearing from his mouth, he didn't have control of his deal. He said he wanted to come back to New York, right? And it was New York. And again, I know this will lead everybody to believe that Melo told Dolan not to do it. No, it was Dolan's cap. Because you got to understand, him taking the poison pill, Houston doing the poison pill, made the Knicks spend more cap-wise. And yeah, it was an issue where the 14 million or whatever it was, the number at the end of that contract would have cost the Knicks about 50 million, based on the way the salary cap works. Okay? It would have cost the Knicks more money to re-sign him. That's the part that needs to be understood. It would have cost the Knicks way more money to re-sign him. But Houston, and again, please understand this. Houston, who was a bad team at the time, but traded for James Harden and would go on to sign Dwight Howard. And then, ironically, hire Mike D'Antoni. They never paid him the poison pill year. They moved his salary to the Lakers, who were taking those years and trying to shed salary anyway. And once again, he wound up with Atlanta, New Jersey, Toronto before actually, leaving the league. And this is the thing, man. This is the thing. Again, I wanted Lin back. I thought it would have been great for publicity. I thought it would have been great for a lot of things. I wanted Lin back, and I thought structurally it would have made sense. A player of his caliber at that salary. If the Knicks would have been smart enough Then once Lin proved he was an NBA player, to just go ahead and wrap him up and not even deal with the free agency shit. But again, you got to understand, the Knicks were trying to build towards a championship. Now, they did a poor job of it. And again, this is the problem. The Knicks didn't have people that understood this thing. Dolan himself was an idiot in not understanding these things. And yes, it was Dolan that said no. He went back and got, the agent went back and got another contract. Okay, we're not matching it because it's going to cost us this amount of money. Even though we were making that money, which again, need to understand this, but Dolan said, and again, he's listening to the free agency. A lot of people in that room were saying not to re-sign Lin because the third year, which again, Houston bluffed because they didn't think he was worth it. How do we know? They traded him when he reached the third year. Before he reached the third year, they traded him. So all the money that, and I know they have a big Asian population in Houston, right, with NASA and everything else. They never paid him the money that pretty much divorced him from the New York Knicks. So the money they offered, they never paid him. They moved that salary to the Los Angeles Lakers. So now, again, look, I already understand this. I'm not going to convince people about Melo. I'm not. The thing is, Lin was convinced who Melo is. See, a lot of details in there, man, because you had a lot of situations that caused insanity to even happen. A lot of details that caused insanity to even become a story, to even be possible to even happen. A lot of things happened in that year. The lockout season, the lack of practice, playing 3 games in 3 nights, the injuries, the way basketball works, the way basketball teams work, you didn't have a lot of time for guys to spend together and get to know each other. So it did seem like, these guys weren't close. It did seem like Melo was hating from afar, from a distance. But that wasn't the case. That wasn't the case. It just wasn't the case. And the media had to make it out. It was good to sell a story that, here you have the blossoming out of nowhere superstar who really wasn't a superstar basketball-wise. Good player. Good player. A rotational guard that you need. In an era now where you don't have a lot of point guards. He's a point guard. He was a point guard. The Knicks needed a point guard. See, the Knicks went on and they reacquired Ray Felton, right? They reacquired Ray Felton. They traded Jared Jeffries and shit like that to get him, right? A couple of picks might have been involved, whatever. But they just moved on. They made a basketball decision. It was a lot of it. Some of it was personal. A lot of it was basketball, and that's the deal. That's the deal. I mean, look, I only covered it. I only followed it at the time, right? To say I was an insider, no, I can't tell you that, but I listened to insiders, and I listen to insiders have a whole different story than what the national narrative. And now, better than insiders, I had the 2 men themselves give their account. And people are going to say, Melo was just covering it up. Melo's just doing this for clicks. Melo just, look, again, I tell y'all, man, y'all believe so much bullshit. He started his show talking about George Karl. You understand what I'm saying? One of these days, maybe he needs to get Mike D'Antoni on that couch, but I doubt it. I don't like Mike D'Antoni personally. I think he's a snake. He might be a good guy overall, but I think you're in the business of basketball. D'Antoni is one of them guys. He's a survivor. He's a survivor. He's not a principal guy. He's a survivor. And ain't nothing wrong with that, right? You got to feed your family. You got to protect your legacy. He's a good coach. He's a good coach to a point. I think he's a hack. I think he's overrated. But I know he's a good coach, right? I know that, he's part of the reason why the NBA plays the way it plays. So you got to give him that part of the perspective of Mike D'Antoni, and you gotta respect that part of his legacy, right? The 7 seconds or less, which I get it. He understands offensive sets. I don't think he's a complete head coach, and I think he gets the reputation and the accreditation of being a better coach than he actually is. I think he's a good offensive coordinator. I don't think he's a great head coach. And I spoke about Mike Brown earlier, who I think Mike Brown is who they say D'Antoni is. And when the Knicks win the championship, it's going to prove whether you believe this is Tibbs' team or not. You can see the difference night and day with the Knicks basically having the same roster with a couple of tweaks. The bench has improved, but they had a good bench early on in Mike D'Antoni's, Tom Thibodeau's tenure. But you see a lot of things here, man. I like a lot of things. And so, look, Melo's in the Hall of Fame. Melo's a real one. I don't watch every episode of his show. I damn sure watch every minute of this interview he did with Lin today. And for guys who were teammates, basically were teammates for like 2 months, like really barely played on the court together, barely played on the court together. You have a lot of shit that was said that nobody knew. And again, I knew that, here's what I knew. They barely played together. Where could the jealousy, obviously, you want two guys to want to win, but nobody was ever, and this is the thing that people need to understand. And no knock to Lin, because he, again, to get where he was to where he is, right? You could have said that's the first Brunson. Only, this is the thing, Brunson got I'm sorry, bro. Brunson is the real deal. Jeremy Lin played at Harvard, was a good player. Should have never been overlooked the way he was. I agree on that. He should have been drafted. People really use his race against him. I agree to all of that. But he did not, he didn't have a left hand. Defensively, right? I know. Oh, well, Melo's a lot better defensive player than Jeremy Lin. Melo's a lot more talented than Jeremy Lin. And again, I hate to even have to say that, but that's the way it is. Like, I don't believe in playing teammate versus teammates, but you just look objectively. Nobody built the team around Jeremy Lin. Brunson has proven you can not only build a team around him, but be a championship level team. And again, even Brunson himself was brought in to enhance the roster, not be the man. And it turned out, he had the ability to be the man. And regardless of the fact, doesn't even matter. In my opinion, doesn't matter whether he was or not. Whether he was brought in here for that purpose or not. Here we are. I've been pushing Brunson as a superstar for years. And no, you're too early. He's not a superstar. How you like us now? Bus lane that never uses the bus lane. And then you're coming into the second lane when I'm trying to get in there. Jesus Christ. But anyway, the fact of the matter is, these things need to be learned. These things need to be learned so we can get back to being because a lot of errors were made. Players have to play. Again, even Lin, like his co-contract situation, that is handled by his agents. The GM does what the GM does. They have the agent is trying to get as much money out of the ownership and the GM is trying to get the player for the best price. That's how it works. That's how it works. And the players have nothing to do with it, but everybody believes because superstars now run their organization. Again, the Knicks were not ran by like the Miami Heat or even the Cleveland Cavaliers. Melo did not have say over the roster. No one said Melo could have stated, and he clearly stated. Because again, one thing I remember in the situation is that Melo, in the offseason, before he went to the Olympics himself, wanted to figure out where the team needed. So he invited Lin, a stat, anybody on the team to his house in LA to see where it was going. Now I don't know if that meeting happened. I do know, I do know, I can't remember if that meeting happened, but I do know Lin was invited. And Lin is doing his own, he had to do his own thing, right? Get his own contract. Get as much money as he can. Again, the man said he clearly said I would have took 3 for 9. The Knicks were stupid for not offering that. Because you would have had the same guy. You still could have made the Ray Felton move. 3 for 9, you could have still made the Ray Felton move. You still would have had cap space to work with. Right? And you got to think, back in those days, right, 3 for 9 was like the salary cap was at $50-something million at the time, $40-something million. So getting Jeremy Lin for that price would have been great. Would have been great. You would have basically had, even if you don't want to start him, you would have had a rotation guard. That's what Jeremy Lin pretty much was. That's where he was for the balance of his career, whether he was making a lot of money or not. And the Knicks needed that. They needed guards. Right now, we're winning the NBA Finals because we got guards. We got genuine point guards, and I covered this in the De'Aaron Fox video. We got genuine point guards, and they don't. They got one, and that's De'Aaron Fox, which is why you can't bench De'Aaron Fox, because he's the only real point guard at this point. As good as Harper is, he's not really a point guard. Not yet. He's a good lefty combo guard weapon who can get the ball to the basket. But you need a point guard to get it all together. That was what Jeremy Lin was for the New York Knicks back then. And it's key to remember, the Knicks finished that season where we were 18-24 the day Mike D'Antoni was fired. And this was a team that did have expectations. They didn't have a point guard coming into that lockout season. We were 18-24. We were like 10-15 when I think something like that, when Lin goes inserted to the starting lineup. They went on a winning streak, then they went on a losing streak. And part of the losing streak, they want to blame Melo. And okay, if you want to blame Melo, blame Melo. But guess what? Most of what you saw during that losing streak was that the roster just wasn't good enough to hang with the elite teams. Miami made Lin look like he belonged in a G League. Let's keep it real. You lost to Miami. You lost to San Antonio. That pick and roll style was not beating those teams. So you had to figure the roster out, and the Knicks figured it out. We went 18-6. We beat Boston. We beat Chicago. Remember, these were good teams back then. We beat Indiana, who was at the time, that was the first year of the Indiana, Paul George era. We beat Portland. We beat the snot out of them. Why? Because we changed the pace. We ran a pace that was more conducive to the roster. People forget this part, and I hate it. Again, that's the roster then, and that's why I didn't like D'Antoni, because it's not that again. If you're gonna play D'Antoni style, then bring in D'Antoni pieces. But we didn't have a D'Antoni roster. We didn't play good enough defense to actually beat elite teams. Those were the issues on the squad. And we did all the 18-6, and then we go 36-12 the next season to start the season before the injuries started hitting that old roster. It was working under Woodson, because Woodson understood what type of roster the team had. That's the thing. A lot of things went on in this situation. A lot of things went on in the situation. And again, to be a championship organization, you got to have the right roster. You got to have the right. You got to have the right coach that understands the roster. You got to have all of that in place. You really do. And unfortunately, the Knicks just went in too many goddamn different directions, which is why we didn't have the success that we would have wanted in that era. Which is why a lot of opportunities were missed in that era. A lot of opportunities were missed. But you learn from it. Look, the Knicks were built, the Knicks didn't get the big three, right? They tried to make their own big three. They made a couple of errors. Amari was on borrowed time with his knees. He wasn't giving you much. You owed him a lot of money. There were a lot of things going on at the time. That don't get reported when they tell his story. But I remember, again, and I will continue to be one of the best chronologers on YouTube. Because I don't forget things. I mean, I don't forget the major details. I forget some of the small things, but I don't forget the overall pit view. And a lot of people do. And a lot of people are so anti-Melo and so this and so that, and they don't even really understand what the real culprits are. The media selling you bullshit and lies, trying to sensationalize stories to make it fit their narratives. People who just, again, no matter what was said in that video, no matter what was said in that interview, they were just not going to believe Melo. Melo was going to be the villain of the story. Only, again, Nick front office ineptitude really is why this was even a thing. And yeah, they found Lin. They played Lin. They signed Lin. They never really believed in him, and that was their problem. Because even if you didn't believe in him as the player, he was making you money. So for business wise, again, you just didn't have people on the same accord, man. Coach, front office, nobody was on the same accord. What can you do? Yeah, I mean, by the time insanity happens, the GM that hired Mike D'Antoni was no longer the GM. It was a whole different regime. It was a bunch of bumbling and fumbling. You didn't have strong leadership at the top. Well, now you have that in Leon Rose. And I want you Knicks fans, again, those of you who follow me, again, whether I have a huge following or not, to understand, to really understand that there are details that you cannot miss. As a Knicks fan, we're one of the most, as the Knicks fan base, we're one of the most informed, on the mark fan bases there is. But be careful of those who feed you bad information, biased information, sensationalized information to make you think a different way. All right, that's all I got to say. Peace.